So welcome, Lieutenant Governor Kounalakis. You missed my introduction of you, but I gave a big shout out about how you came to the Pasadena Women First when you were running, and we are so proud to have been among your first endorsers. So we know you've been a longtime supporter of women.
Oh my goodness, that was, Linda, that was unforgettable. That's the first time I asked anybody for money. I don't know if you remember. I was speaking and I came up with it just, I'm asking for $20.18.
That's right. And I
all the handbags opened. It was
great. I immediately went in and I contributed to you. I loved it. I thought it was
Thank you. Thank you.
We remember you well, Eleni.
What a great group. That was wonderful.
Thank you so much for joining us. So
pleasure.
Yeah, so I know we have a few questions. Did you want to say a few words before I go into questions? And
maybe, gosh, there's so much to talk about. Maybe I could just start by recognizing today's International Women's Day. And we have a lot of successes to celebrate in California. Top of mind for me is that we now have our 4th statewide constitutional office. When Fiona Ma, Betty Yee, and I were all elected, it was the first time that we had 3 out of 8 women in our statewide constitutional offices. With the appointment of Dr. Shirley Weber as Secretary of State, we now have 4 out of 8. That's a really big deal, something I'm very proud of. I'm also very proud to see all these incredible California women making their way to Washington, D.C., most notably Kamala Harris, my friend. I had a bit role in the advocacy for her candidacy, but again, that started with the Pasadena Women's Group that gave me a platform to give her a platform, and on and on. But it's so incredible to see Kamala serving as our first female vice president. But there are others. You might not know that Janet Yellen had been living in California, teaching at UC Berkeley. She's now our Secretary of the Treasury, the first woman ever to fulfill that role. And also another professor at Berkeley, Jennifer Granholm, also in the cabinet as Secretary of Energy. 2 California women that are often associated with other places, but they were living here, sort of like Meghan and Harry. Everybody wants to live here. But they have gone, and others as well. Isabel Guzman, the small business administrator, and Julie Su, Deputy Labor, also in Washington, pending her confirmation. So I think all that's very exciting. Of course, Nancy Pelosi, in her ceiling-shattering role in her 2nd term as Speaker of the House. And we still do have 1 out of 2 of our senators who's a woman. So I think that's worth saying. I think we can get into a lot of things going on, particularly with the community college. But why don't we organize it around your questions?
Okay, and I do want to say how humble you are in saying what role you played in helping Vice President Harris get the nomination for the vice president. So I told that story. I heard it on the news, and I told it to several women. I know I told it to Dr. Christian, who said it just sent chills down her spine. So if any of you ever want to hear that story and you don't know it, Lieutenant Governor Kounalakis has been just a powerful woman and a leader for all of us, and someone who has advocated for us. So thank you so much. So Lieutenant Governor, first question. So as we're celebrating the International Women's History Month, who are the women who have inspired you?
I find inspiration across the board, but I always start with my own grandmother. She was lived her whole life in a village in Greece, actually 2, the one where she was raised and the one next door where she married my grandfather and raised her family. She protected her family during the Second World War and the horrible civil war in Greece that followed. But she never learned how to read, never learned to read or write. She couldn't even sign her own name. In fact, it was not uncommon for women back then not to be able to, who were not literate, but she believed in the United States. She let my father travel here alone, no money, no English, to work as a farm worker. And I think about her passion and her strength and her commitment to protecting her family and helping her community with whatever tools that she had. And so, as I certainly take inspiration from Nancy Pelosi, who's been a mentor of mine, of course, Hillary Clinton, who I worked with so closely, and whose campaign to be the first woman president I supported with all of my heart and soul 2 times. The fact that her comment about baking cookies that she ended up apologizing for 10 years was like a lightning rod to me in my 20s, feeling like somebody else was articulating what I felt, which is I didn't want to be home. I wanted to be part of this big world around me. Bake cookies, okay, but to be part of the big world around me. And she spoke to me back then. But I also get inspiration from our teachers, from our healthcare workers, from the women who pick strawberries in Santa Cruz in order to have a chance for their children to have the American dream. I find inspiration from women everywhere I go. I find inspiration from women of color who've organized to elect more women. I find women of color's dedication to helping other women to be absolutely breathtaking. Some of the old kind of sharp elbows or jealousy, women of color and their dedication to supporting other women has been something that has been very inspiring to me. So we still have a lot of firsts left to be had and to celebrate. We still have women who are behind in equal pay. We have women who are behind in the C-suite and corporations and on corporate boards. We have women who are behind in getting in elected office. We have women who are behind in terms of being able to fundraise for those things because it's just so much harder for women than for men. But all around are women who are striving, who are persistent, who aren't giving up, and who are helping each other.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. And one of the things you talked about is the economic recovery, and I know that was huge in your the economy of the state was huge in your platform when you ran. But some of the news articles most recently have really focused on how much women have lost in this during the pandemic, especially women with children and women of color. So, what are the policy changes that you believe need to happen to help women get back, to
Yeah.
achieve economic prosperity?
So, as you know, California's economy is disproportionately impacted to the rest of the country by trade and tourism. We are a service economy. A lot of the jobs in the service economy are women's jobs, and trade and or tourism in particular also supports jobs in tourism and the service economy. So, what we need to do to invest to get those jobs back and get the economy rolling again in the sectors that impact women the most have a lot to do with the stimulus money coming in, and it is coming in. So California's budget was at 15 billion, maybe more, but about a $15 billion budget surplus. The governor has prioritized fiscal health, so paying down pension obligations, very, very important. Paying into the rainy day fund, very important for next year's budget. We don't know what it'll bring. But then the other 2 priorities, investing in those who really need just funds to keep their head above water, the earned income tax credit recipients and others eligible for about $600 additional stimulus. That's a state stimulus, never happened before. Women will benefit from that. And then $2 billion to help small and medium-sized businesses, again, where many women are either employed or that they own them. So that has been critically important. The federal stimulus that was signed over the weekend, the American Rescue Act, we will get about $41 billion into the state from the federal government, including stimulus checks, including the continuation of unemployment benefits, very important for women who lost their jobs and need to support their families. Other policies that have been important, the extension of the moratorium on evictions, also critically important for women. And the stimulus funds that are going to come in, as you know, about $5 billion for higher education. Very important, again, disproportionately helping women. And then back to the state budget, a real intention of directing our surplus funds toward helping women, which is something that's being built into every program, whether it's higher education and job retraining, or whether it's supporting food banks, or whether it's directing some of the $2 billion in stimulus for small and medium-sized business to help keep a heartbeat, and directing those in particular to women and minority-owned companies.
Thank you. And we are so proud that you are joining all the California Community College women. So I don't know if you know that this caucus is now over 300 strong, representing women from the community college system from all areas. And so proud that you are now part of the Board of Governors. So I know that our caucus recently sent a template for the resolution for fair pay, equal fair employment. So how do you see that we can partner with you on furthering women's empowerment in the system?
Well, Linda, you're absolutely right. There is more work to be done here in the Capitol to deal with the kind of systemic racism, systemic sexism that has been going on for generations. I do want to give a shout out to California's first partner, Jennifer Newsom. She is absolutely tireless in this space. Hannah Beth Jackson, as you all know, in her time in this building and advocating for policies, insisting that women are on boards. What you find is that when you have women at the highest levels of leadership, that also trickles down into an awareness of the need to look at hiring practices and employment practices in everything from our Fortune 500 companies down to the way that independent contractors are treated. So there's more work to be done. There are, again, in this legislative cycle, many different bills that are being debated right now. The role that you all can play is to continue to give input on the impact of various proposed legislation on your institution, which is enormous. The community college system in the state of California is critical for developing the next generation of the workforce, for upskilling existing workers, to provide that pathway to a four-year university for students who want to seek it. And you're on the front lines of what is about 2 million California students currently enrolled in your system. So raising awareness for the kinds of legislative reforms that will help you helps us make sure that the legislation is the most impactful it can be.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor Kounalakis, and we really appreciate you taking time from your very, very busy schedule to join us. Thank you again.
Thank you, Linda. Wonderful to be with all of you, and I look forward to visiting in person. As Linda said, last year the governor signed legislation which we advocated for, putting the lieutenant governor on the Board of Governors. I've had, I think, 3 meetings so far. It's such an honor. And I take very seriously the fact that I'm the only elected official. The lieutenant governor is the only elected official on all 3 boards of higher ed. And the ability to work together across the system of public higher ed in this state is also really important. So thank you for your advocacy. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for all you do for our beautiful state of California.